Hey, everybody. Welcome to week 198. Yeah, 198. So in two more, we're gonna be at the 200th week anniversary. We will have Jack back in the saddle because we let him have vacation. So it's like you go and enjoy your family. We'll talk about culture today. So we're geared up and ready. Got my culture t-shirt, Movement Mortgage. They do a good job, man, with their culture. So shout out to Casey Crawford. You're doing a good job over there. And I love them. They have had my mortgage and I've refinanced it once, and I'm not going to ever refinance it again at the rate that I have it at. So I'm grateful for 2.65%. So anyway, they are awesome. But we're going to be talking about culture. Also, Adam, anything new on the Corporate Transparency Act and some of the brouhaha that's happening in that before we get into the economic impact of culture?
I don't have anything in the Corporate Transparency Act. We did just send in our newsletter, we talked about the tax proposals that were in the State of the Union. So I was going to riff on that a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
The there wasn't really anything new here. This is very similar to the Senate tax bill that passed a while back that didn't go anywhere in the House. And, I mean, effectively, for our client base, it probably means about a 10% rate increase, at most, maybe in most cases more like it about five. But, the big kind of highlights for people, just to be aware of is that when they talk about changing the corporate income tax rate up from 21% for C corporations up to 28%. 28% would bring it on par with S corporations and partnerships, so there'd be parity. But independent of that, the phase in has historically targeted large companies that currently don't pay taxes today. So like Duke Energy, Salesforce, Nike, who pay less taxes than you do, Gary.
Well, that's
So that,
exciting.
yeah, I know. So there's like there is kind of a threshold where if you're below that, you enjoy a lower rate. So it's just item number one. Item number two is it does take the top tax rate up from where it is today at about 37% up to 39.5%, which is where it was under Bush and Obama. So it brings that back up. And then, presumably the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act stuff would just phase out or expire. Maybe they make some parts of it permanent, who knows? But it really, it's not super great. But at the same time, you know, it's not terrible. It's nothing new. Probably won't go anywhere. And what it made me think of was, I think I shared this in the last webinar. Um, a good friend, Dave Gilroy, also a fellow libertarian, most of the time, was on the Cornelius Town Board, and he recently hung up his cleats, and he just said, "Dude, there's just no. It doesn't matter who's in power. They all spend money like drunken sailors." That's my word, drunken sailor. He just said spend money, because he was an Army Ranger, so he probably would not have said drunken sailor. But and it kind of, like think about it as I was preparing for this, Gary. It's like, you know, I can imagine myself. Tell me if you would vote for me, Gary.
All
Um,
right.
hey, Gary, I'm going to go to Washington. I'm going to drain that swamp, and I'm going to do what needs to be done, for the betterment of this country, make us stronger, make us fiscally responsible, and make this great for our kids in the future. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to have to cut spending. And in particular, by doing that, it means that I'm going to need to raise your retirement age by a couple years. I'm going to need to cut defense spending, in particular personnel costs, so retiree benefits and health benefits for our our veterans. Um, and then I'm going to need to spend some money on infrastructure. So that's going to cost something, from you. I'm also going to need to raise your tax rates just a little bit to start paying down all this debt that we've incurred from the past. So do I have your vote?
You should, because you're
Yeah,
speaking truth, but nobody's going to vote for that.
nah, I know. So it's like, it just, there's no, not that I'm buying Bitcoin yet, but that's ultimately what, some version of that it's unless for the first time ever we grow our way out of it. You know, something like that's gonna have to happen. For the people that have been, flaming me, thank you. I appreciate that. With this newsletter, it's like just a reminder that the last guy that actually had a balanced budget was Bill Clinton in his second term with Newt Gingrich. So let's just put that in perspective. you know. So and I want to say the last guy that did it before Bill Clinton was John Kennedy. That's been bad for a long time. Anywho, that's
Yeah.
what I got on the opening tirade, Gary.
All right. Well, thank you. Hey, before we get rocking and rolling in this, so we got a number of folks on here, which is great. Thank you for continuing to be on here. Dude, think about it. Adam, I think today, no, not today, because the 13th of March 2020 was the last day I was ever in a gym. I
Oh
keep
wow.
paying my dues. I keep paying my dues at the Harris Y, which is just a half mile away, but it changed a lot of things. But the next week is when we started doing these things. So kind of crazy. So we are going to be doing this live and in person for a studio audience at the karaoke bar at the Hamilton, which is so much fun. It's a really cool venue. And we did it for our 100th week anniversary 2 years ago. So there will be food and that sort of thing, but it's limited to the first 100 people. So if you want to do it, let us know. If you haven't RSVP'd already, do. If you've been on this list and attended any of these things, you've gotten an invitation. If you have not found that invitation, if it went into your spam filter, or if you blocked us from all of our emails, then just put us in the chat and I'll make sure that you get an invitation. But that will be 11 a.m. to noon. We are still going to do this for you, Gerald Broussard, and your AI assistant. We are going to be doing this via Zoom as well, so you can still dial in from Kingwood, Texas, and wherever else people are. All right. So, but I do want to ask you guys, if you would put it in the chat or even in the Q&A, I'll monitor that. I would love to know, we would love to know, what are the kind of things that you would like us to hit on that? Last time we did, I think, our top 100 tax things and frequently asked questions for the 100th week anniversary. And then we just kind of randomly took those questions and we answered stuff live as well. So just be thinking about that. So Adam, go ahead and let's talk about the economics of culture.
Yeah. So as we're thinking about webinar topics this week, it seems like, you know, our clients, business owners, CEOs, they're always focused on culture, and wanting to improve culture, but it's like they don't know how. So it's like you read a book and you're like, oh, okay, and then you don't do anything with the book, or you put in a kegerator, or we're gonna take some people to lunch, or get a ping pong table, or working on culture. How are we doing that? Remote work a couple days a week, or then we're going to bring people back to the office, just have them sit and stare at each other. So it's an interesting topic in terms of like, wow, there seems to be no exact way, but there are some ways that generally I think work. And at the same time, it's one of those things where, how long will it take you to improve your culture if you um, work at it a lot, 5 years. How long will it take if you work at it a whole lot? 3 years. So it's like, it's also one of those things where it's like, you're not going to get in, you're not going to run it. You're not going to go from couch potato to 3 hour marathon in 12 weeks. Like that's a multi-year process of building a base, and culture is the same way. So like, I think at this point, at this point in the lecture series, I think most people are like, you know, really, I have no time for that. Show me the economics. So all this said, I do truly believe that, you can transform a culture, and at the same time, you can get some early wins out of the gate that can give you some really good momentum. If you just really if you're just really focused. So what we thought we'd talk about in this webinar is just, what are the economics behind culture change? Like what could you realistically expect? And we're gonna be vulnerable, so nobody make fun of me. We're actually gonna use BGW as an example, Gary.
Yeah.
Um, and with real numbers that are quite embarrassing. Um, and then we're going to talk about, what we've been doing to try to make a difference that, hopefully we'll see some improvement on. But these are things that everybody can do that when you look at them, you're like, yeah, that I probably should do that. So with that in mind, I'm gonna go ahead and share my
Go ahead,
screen and
share. And
start talking about the economics here. So
that sounds good. And David Worrell, we're going to have to talk to you afterwards because he said he disagreed and he was able to read a book and change the culture overnight.
oh wow, that's great, David. Yeah. Always, yeah, you always have some good news there, David. I appreciate that. All right, so got to figure out how to move my thingy here. There we go. Okay, now I can see my pen. Okay, so you can see I'm assuming you
Blank
can
screen.
see OneNote, blank screen, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so I think what is okay, there we go. So I think the first problem that you have, thank you. I swear I tested this. Is this thing on?
Yeah, it's on. Yeah,
Okay.
you're drawing a stick figure right now.
Yep.
Up in
Okay.
the lower
So
left hand.
this represents Gary. Okay.
Yeah, no hair. That's me.
Yep. This represents Gary's direct reports. Let's assume he's got a 1-to-10 ratio, right? So that, which
Yeah,
is kind of classic management, right, Gary? Um,
classic. Yeah.
so I think the first problem that you've got to realize is that there is some economic investment in terms of improving culture. So we got to talk about, well, what are the costs? Like what are the actual hard dollar costs outside of pizza parties, right? Well, the first realization is that, all management studies that talk about, hey, if you really want to be an effective leader, and you've got kind of this ratio of 1-to-10, what's the first thing that you need to do? The first thing you need to do is this guy needs to be spending about 50% of his time focused on leading these people. And when people hear that, that's, guess what happens, Gary? You know, no way. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that because I work for a living. I lead these people as sort of my side hustle. But my day job is that I work for a living. So the first problem you got to solve for is how are you going to get that time? Well, the only way you're going to get that time is you're going to have to add a belly button, and let's say that guy's 100K, all in, just round numbers, right? So for me to get my 50%, I'm going to have to add a belly button to take over what I'm doing, right? Everybody with me so far? All
Yeah.
right, cool. So if this number was more like 5, maybe this isn't scientific. Harvard Business Review has not done a linear relationship study like this, but let's just assume for this purpose, it's 25%, instead of 50%. So I think the first thing that you have to look at organizationally is that where I have people with direct reporting relationships, first off, do I have like 1-to-20 relationships? If so, I should do something about that because it's not effective. But let's say I'm down to 1-in-10. How much time are those guys really doing training, mentoring, true supervision versus like, hey, they're the boss in name only. In other words, like when something bad happens, they have to get in the middle of it. But the management style, Gary, is if I didn't yell at you, you're doing great. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say I look around, and I really have 4 of these people, with this condition that exists. So this number is really more like 400K. That's my investment, right? So what can I expect to get out of that? Well, generally speaking, what I can expect to get is reduced turnover, and I can expect to get efficiency. Where's the efficiency hit? It hits with these people down here, right? So it's like, okay, well, that's great. Like, what does that actually save me in terms of real numbers? Well, in real numbers, Gary, off the top of your head, what's that wild guess about what we spent in recruiting fees last year that could have been avoidable?
Woo. Was it about 200?
Right?
Hey,
Guess
good
what?
guess, because Rachel
Yeah,
just came in with the exact same number. Thank you,
yeah.
Rachel.
Guess what? I just found me some money. You know, by getting rid of these, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I'm still 150K in the hole, right? Okay. So where do I find that $150,000? Well, hey, Gary, did anybody at BGW come up to you last year and say, you know what, Gary, I don't have enough stuff to do. I'm bored,
I don't recall that.
I don't have
I
enough work
don't
to
recall
do.
that.
Okay, what did they actually say?
I'm too busy.
Yeah, I'm overwhelmed. I'm too busy, right? So, well, what actually happened at BGW? What happened at BGW is our top line was about right there, 12 million bucks. All right. Within that, we made a decent profit. And we had what we felt like were, about the right belly buttons. But within this 12 million, guess what? We did that's the actual work we did. So we charged 12 million, but we did $14.5 million worth of work. So we effectively wrote off 2.5 million. That's work that we did that just vanished into the ether. Sorry if you can hear the dogs barking in the background. Somebody did a very well-timed doorbell ring, probably the Amazon guy. So, point being that the team that we had actually did this work, right?
Yeah.
So they did it. We just didn't get paid for it. So what would happen, Gary, if, hey, I could just reduce that down to only 500K that I didn't get paid for? I'll give the team another 500K off, right? That means that really I should be able to do 13.5 million with no additional cost, right?
Yeah.
So now, where am I at in the money? I'm at
1.5 million up.
1.5 million here minus, plus 250K minus 400K labor to put in the supervisory people to really give the supervisory people a chance, to kind of make this happen, and monitor this, right? That's still pretty good. I haven't done the math, but it seems like I'm still in the money,
Yeah.
on that equation, right? So that's what would be available to BGW if we chose to actually focus diligently on this problem associated with fixing solving for our own efficiency problems. And by the way, I mean, this is this ratio here, like before anybody panics and says, "Oh my God, what the hell Mickey Mouse operation are you running over there?" Um, that this is actually about industry standard. Like basically what it's saying is the whole industry sucks, you know, and we just suck a little less than everybody else, you know, at this. So because the actual industry ratio for this is about a third, you know, so we just suck a little bit less, you know, at it than the rest of the guys, but that still sucks because the people actually did the work, right? So we're going to give them a little bit of their time back, you know, we're going right, which is right here. We're going to still accept the fact that there's going to be some waste. It's hard to eradicate it all.
Yeah.
You've got some training in there. And then, you know, what's left is, hey, that's additional work that we could do. New clients, you know, it's not like we're going to raise price to get that. These are new clients, new work that we can perform because we're doing the work anyway, just for new clients that have no additional costs associated with it. Which, if we can do that, Gary, it also allows us to kind of maintain our pricing structure, you know, with our existing clients, right? You know,
Right.
instead of having to figure out, well, how do we pay for the raises and everything else that people want, but we can't add more people, you know, because we're already, you know, we're already at where we're at from a labor perspective. So that to me is sort of like the what's in it for me piece of the equation in terms of like how would I calculate whether or not focusing on cultural improvement is a way to get this done. And honestly, like somebody's probably listened to this, you know, and said, well, how like land the plane, Sully. Like talk to me about the relationship between your inefficiency and culture, you know, which is what we're gonna do right now, right, Gary?
That's right.
All right.
Let's dive into it.
Awesome.
So again, I appreciate your honesty, Adam. And I was speaking yesterday to a Renaissance executive forum, and there were a couple of our clients there, and they came up to me afterwards because I was talking on imposter syndrome, and they said, "Man, Adam Boatsman, we love that guy. He is anything but typical. He is an anything but typical CPA." And I said, "Yeah, because weapon number 6 is celebrate the fact that you are anything but typical and celebrate that in other people." So I just thought that was pretty funny. But even how you're talking about that is anything but typical. So Adam, shout out to you. One of the things that we did, and again, we don't have it all figured out. We are still learning on the job, man. And I see some of our employees in this list and some former employees that are working for other companies now that are on this chat today. And they know, you know, like we don't have it all figured out. We're working on it, and we're trying to be really intentional about it. But one of the things that we did, and we've talked about it a while ago, this was right before lockdown. This is actually in January when we implemented it of 2020. We had no idea we were going into lockdowns in March. I don't know that anybody did. Maybe a few ne'er-do-wells in the global scene did, but we didn't. But one of the things that we heard from our millennial rank and file was, hey, we want more feedback. We want more mentoring. We want that. That was, you know, that age group of people demands more things than what we did. We were just like, suck it up, buttercup, and just do it. But they want more feedback. They want mentoring, et cetera. So I saw ADP do this thing. They had this app called Standout 2.0. And we're going to walk you through some of the things, but it's basically a dialogue facilitation tool. That's it. It's a weekly pulse with you and your direct reports, and then you and whoever you report to. So I report into Adam, and I give him my weekly pulse of what's going on with me. And so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can find it here. I got to keep going here. Hold on. Okay, here we go. All right. Come on, man. Let's see. Let's see if this does it. Okay, here we go. All right. Can you guys see this? This is the check-in, and this is actually my last check-in. I give myself strong grades, but I also hit myself real hard if I don't. But it asks these questions, and so all of your direct reports have these questions coming at you. So it takes less than a second to do this. Last week I had a chance to use my strengths every day. Agree, strongly agree down to strongly disagree, right? I added an outstanding value. Strongly agree, strongly disagree. Okay, so it's now taking you 2 whole seconds to actually fill this thing out. Last week, did Adam connect with you about your work priorities? Yes, he did. So it's taken 3 seconds. Now, this is what takes me a little bit longer. I have to think about this one. What activities did you love last week? I call it Thrive with her, the Thrive stuff in my book, but it's the same thing, love. I re-recorded 2 podcasts. We onboarded a new client. I spoke to a Renaissance executive forum last week as well. Our weekly webinars. I love doing these things. Meeting with prospects, referral partners. I love doing those. Okay, so one thing that I loathed was I saw how one of my teammates was just underwater, just struggling because she's carrying a heavy load. So I'm not going to reveal who that was. Hopefully, well, maybe I did. So anyway, those are the things that you answer. So the next one is, all right, I list off my priorities, what I got to do, and then I move on to that. So that, and then it's like, do I need any help from Adam? And if so, what are the things that I need? That's my check-in. So Adam has a pulse immediately of me and everybody else that reports directly to him what's going on. I have the same thing from the people that report to me. And I get to see when they're struggling, like, oh man, my kids were sick or whatever. These are things that you wouldn't even be talking about. You wouldn't be talking about these things in an annual review. Nobody likes doing annual reviews any more than they like going to the dentist. Sorry, Mike Reimels. I don't mind going to the dentist, but so we have a number of dentists. Yeah. But nonetheless, you kind of get my drift. And what was really helpful is when we went into lockdown and all of a sudden we're working remotely, that was one of the biggest things that we could see is we could connect with one another on stuff that was beyond just like, hey, did you get these things done? Where are we at on that, etc. Just showing that you care and having a mechanism to help us do that has been a game changer for us. And I don't know, and Rachel could probably weigh in on this, but I don't think that we spend more than probably $3,500 a year with this Standout 2.0. And I think ADP still owns it. They bought it from Marcus Buckingham, who was one of the co-authors of StrengthsFinder. It's a really good system. So anyway, you want to talk about what we do with our engagement pulse with that, Adam?
Yeah, and just because the two are really related. What I wanted to hit on with your check-in, Gary. If you kind of go back to first practical application, right, in terms of tying it back to the economics of doing that check-in. So, first off, if Gary puts in his loathe, I'm struggling because I don't know what I'm doing. That's legit. Like I'm struggling, like our software is complicated. We ask people to do complicated stuff. Like I'm struggling because I don't know what I'm doing. And I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. Flashing red light.
Yes.
That means I'm probably going to be writing off that time because I'm not going to build a client for Gary spinning his wheels. Right. So that's flashing red. So it allows me, like, instead of Gary suffering in silence, I'm able to get all over that, right out of the gate. The flashing light number 2 is if Gary's just doing something that he absolutely hates, period, in terms of his loathe, it allows me to kind of refocus in terms of saying, okay, well, let's get to the bottom of why I'm asking you to do something that you hate, because otherwise, you kind of wasting, you're wasting your time, on that, because if you've ever had to do something that you don't enjoy over and over again, pretty soon you start doing less and less of it until you quit. So it's like early warning, sign number two. And then lastly, with the priorities, I get a chance to make sure that Gary's got his priorities straight and I can give him the help that he needs. So that's the way, you get kind of your weekly early warning indicator in terms of, okay, is something going wrong here that's going to mess up efficiency or otherwise, cause me to have a retention problem. And I'll tell you what, again, going back to the retention thing, if, people can look, oh, that's just another tool, Gary, whatever. You're right. It can be just another tool if you never do anything with it. Meaning, like, if the employee never checks in, like if you don't encourage the employees to check in, and conversely, if the employees check in, but then you actually don't do anything, like you make no acknowledgement, of their loathe, like, hey, I loathe, and like, wow, that's great. Thanks for the information. Versus like, dude, I saw your loathe, that's that sucks. What can I do about that? It's like, wow, this guy actually, cares about me. So that's where this next piece comes in, that I'm going to share. That's kind of economic indicator number two. So can you see my screen again, Gary? All right, cool.
Yep,
So each quarter in the same tool, we also ask our employees to rate what they think about us. And these we questions are, all about the company. The me questions are all about the individual and how they're feeling. So if you kind of look at this in terms of how it's going to affect what leading indicator of retention and efficiency, let's focus on question 6 and question 5, meaning like, okay, if I score low on that, meaning I get no recognition when I think that I'm killing it, and I believe that nobody has my back. A good way to make sure that I don't have Gary's back, let him be reporting lows and I never do anything about them.
Yeah.
So, if I don't think I'm going to be recognized and I don't think that people have my back, guess what? Eventually I'm going to start looking. Guess what? Adam's recruiting fees start going up, at that point. In terms of the efficiency piece, I really feel like question number 2 gets to the efficiency, meaning like from the CEOs that I've talked to and just our internal, research, that as much as research can be, most of the time when people do something that was a wasted effort, and I hate to use that term in like a mean way, like wasted effort, like, hey, you did something that was a waste, that sounds terrible to say, but that goes back to, hey, I had $2.5 million of that stuff. It really comes down to they actually just didn't know what to do. Like it's somewhere in there was a they didn't understand the process. They did more work than was necessary. They had to redo the work because they didn't understand something. I didn't explain something very clearly. So I feel like what's practical action step number 2, if you think about what's practical action step number 2, find out how your people are doing on a routine basis and actually do something about it if they're struggling. Practical action step number 2 is, how much does it cost to let people know that they did a good job and that you have their back, Gary?
I think 0.
Right, 0. Yeah. So no cost. So you just need to like do that, and in a way other than like, you're doing great work, Gary. Oh, great. Thank you for the platitude, Adam. What did I do that was great? That stuff you do, Gary. I mean, it needs to be like a real thing, right? And then at work, I clearly understand what's expected of me. this is a tough one. I think this is my biggest lesson learned on this one is that you really gotta, like, it's no joke. You really do have to document what you do and what you expect of people in in the most glaringly obvious ways that you would not think would be obvious. So, and I'll get again, I use a real world example at BGW. Um, we you know, we have clients that we invoice, and most of those clients actually pay us. It's great, and we use a automated system that handles that for us in terms of like sending Gary the invoice and then reminding Gary that he owes us money. Well, systems aren't fallible. They have to have a human in the middle, if there's a breakdown. And, so we had a job description that actually said, do collections. And like, things aren't bad, but they could certainly be better, And what we found is when we actually put another human in the middle and said, well, hey, could you see what's going on with Gary not paying us? The answer was, um, oh, nobody got in touch with, like, I've never seen that invoice before. This is like people that Gary owed us money for 90 days. Well, because nobody had ever actually put in the job description, not only do you need to do collections, you need to do them daily. Like that
Yeah.
second step was missing. So it's more like, yeah, I'll do collections if I have time. And you know what I don't have? Time.
Right.
So we had to break it down to the point where a lot of the, we're not done yet, but a lot of the roles at BGW now are down to like, what are the things that you should do daily? And I'm not talking like, work on the Acme file. It's more
Right.
like every day do these 5 things, no matter what, for every role. It's made a big difference in terms of people, because then now people are clear. It's like, okay, now I got it. I know what you need from me. It makes my job easier too, in terms of recognizing good work, because guess what? You did the things that were the priorities, right? So that one takes time. So you go back to the needing to invest, to actually get stuff documented. I mean, that's where it comes down to. That's part of you making the investment and hiring additional people that takes, if you're a manager that also has a workload, you take some time to take some stuff off your plate by hiring some people, and that's your next job, is making sure that people know what's expected of them. That's how you get the efficiency gain. I don't think there's probably some process stuff that could happen, in terms of like, hey, let me try to make the processes more efficient or whatever that could happen that could help you. But I actually feel like this is the biggest bang for the buck in terms of truly getting a quick efficiency gain, is make sure people know what to do in a very clear, crystal clear manner. Um, and then make sure that, they know that you have their back.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that I've seen across every company that has been a client or that I've coached or whatever, or that I've been in, any company that's had more than one person, and that is communication. And however, whether you use Standout or whether you use an Excel file to go through, like whatever, I don't care, but communication and clarity, what's expected of me, what's a win, and how do we win together. Man, if you just hit those two things, it'll make a huge difference. And process is a big deal too. That this is the year for process, nailing it down and following our process, because last year, again, in vulnerability, we've got good processes. We just didn't hold everybody and ourselves accountable to follow those processes. And anytime that we had an issue, it was because the processes weren't followed. And so we're like doubling down on that together. And our team knows why we're doing it. And I don't know, man. I mean, those scores, yeah, we can still keep improving them, and there are areas that we definitely want to keep improving. But man, I'd say we've seen some steady growth in the last 4 years, wouldn't you, Adam?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that I'd add to the making sure that people understand what you're wanting them to do, um, that was a real eye opener for us as well, is that a lot of our clients are very familiar with the disc profile, and they most of the CEOs are going to be D's or I's. Very
Yeah.
few of them are going to be S and C's. But if you look at so for us, it's like, well, I did document it, Gary. I wrote a sentence. Like, couldn't have been more clear, in the instruction set to you. But the reality is that I want to say like 60% of the general population of disc takers. So I mean, generally, who takes a disc? Employers and employees. So it's a good sample population in my mind of people that are, actively working on this stuff. About I want to say it's 60 to 65% of the population are S's and C's. What S's and C's thrive on? Kind of more black and white directions. So it's like, if we want to be effective, we have to meet the people on their terms. And if you're just playing the odds, over documentation and over communication, if you're a D, probably means under documentation and under communication to the S and the C. So I think getting examples of like what good documentation looks like and evaluating that versus what you got, pretty good exercise, for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, to just bring it back up to a very high level, after seeing your Rube Goldberg explanation, which I always like your explanations. But at the end of the day, retention. We've talked about this before, but retention, if you've got a lot of turnover, man, it doesn't matter. And without using names, there's a company in town that has a bowling alley, all kinds of stuff. They have one of the worst cultures. You could not pay me enough to go there. I don't care if they have a bowling alley. Their retention is extremely low. Their turnover is extremely high. Why is that? A lot of it is because, yeah, they have these really cool accoutrements. That's easy. Having expectations very clearly laid out and treating one another with respect and dignity, that culture isn't really known for that. And there's a reason for that. So, and the other harsh truth here, anybody that's running a company that's watching this, you are responsible for your culture. You can't outsource it. It's not HR's job. It's your job. That's your number one thing as a leader in your company. And if you don't like the way that things are going, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. And this is hard because this includes me. This includes Adam. It's our responsibility. If we aren't holding people accountable, we're just letting stuff slide, and we're not having the hard conversations. And we're not weeding out the offenders that are violating your core values. It's interesting. We were recording a podcast yesterday, and we were talking about culture. The guy brought up culture, and it's really interesting. He's like, yeah, one of the things that we hire and fire based on our core values. And the guy owns a music lessons company, Bold Music. They do a really cool job. But he said they for every 30 applicants that they interview, they only hire one. 30 to 1. They're that picky. But when they don't deal with an offender and have the hard conversations, again, it goes to communication, then we got problems. And we've been guilty of that too. So this isn't a magic bullet, a magic pill. We'll have to get that book from David Worrell so that we know, what book to read so that we can instantly change things overnight. But for the rest of us mere mortals, it's a daily slog. But it's a
Yeah.
daily slog worth doing. And I love the fact that you showed the economics of it, because a lot of people think that it's just fluffy.
Well,
No,
that's
it's
right. I mean,
going on.
there's got to be something, I mean, you should do it because it's the right thing to do, but it really, you got to focus on the economics, to see what's the result hold, in terms of the effort. And again, most of the work is actually free, outside of, I can't think of another way that a CEO or a leader could create time without hiring somebody to take on what they're delegating. Meaning like hire somebody at the bottom, delegate some of my responsibilities to the next person down, blah 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 blah. But you know, and it's hard because that investment has to come before you see the result. But I actually do believe that at a minimum, if you put the work into it, your worst case scenario is probably break even in a year. Your best case scenario is you're going to be probably 2 to 1 in the money, if I was going to guess.
So David, thank you for these book recommendations. He says the best business books are books that he's read on culture. One, Lead Your Tribe, Love Your Work. Two, Leaders Eat Last. And both of those, I mean, if you can just think about the titles of those, that'll give you the sweet essence of those things. One of the other thing that I think is worth talking about a little bit, Adam, is this whole notion. So in Standout, it talks loves and loathes. These are the things I love doing. You got to pay attention to that with your team. And these are the things I loathe doing. So like I said, I call it thrive and wither. And I've been doing that for a long time, well before Standout came out, but it's the same concept. If we focus on and listen, and we listen to our team, and we have a mechanism to actually look at those things. What do you love doing? What are your thrive zones versus what are your wither zones? We do this thing, and it's a simple T chart. I'll show you. Split the page vertically, and on the left side, right thrive, and on the right side, right wither. That's what this T chart is. And have your team start with you, but then have your team list all the kind of responsibilities, the kind of stuff that they love doing. Do they like repetition? Do they like variety? Do they like just dealing with a lot of people? Or do they like just darkened room and 3 screens? What is it that they love to do? And have them be extremely honest. There can't be any punitive results for how they feel or how they're wired. You just can't do that. But if you have them be honest, and then you have a conversation about it, the job still requires these things, right? But there might be certain roles within the company, or there might even be responsibility sharing within the team. If you've got more than just a couple people in your company, you have the luxury oftentimes of being able to delegate certain things or outsource certain things. And we've seen clients of ours where they hated going to work because they were carrying too much on their wither column, and they were just slogging it through it, but they never really thought about, man, I just hate doing this. They just think, oh, I got to suck it up and just do it. But if they start realizing, wait a minute, these are the things that are dragging me down, it's really interesting that they can, start verbalizing it, again, communication, and find out there are people on your team that actually love doing the stuff that you hate doing. Hey, that's the beauty of life. It's the beauty of having a team, and true diversity, true diversity of thought and perspective. So so oh, okay. So David, I think has also kind of chimed in here. He says, has anyone seen anything similar to Standout? It looks like ADP wants to sell a minimum of 150 employees for a subscription. We don't have 150 employees. We're at 80 some. I don't know what it is, but and we had fewer than that. We probably were in the 60s when we started. So, David, just send me a note separately, and I can find out. The guy that got us into that, he's no longer with ADP, but I still have some people there, and we can make that happen. But it's worth looking into. So anyway, and we don't get a dime for that. It's not like we get spiffed for it. We just like talking about stuff that has actually benefited us. So I think that Thrive Wither deal, as well as some Standout, but solicit the communication however you choose to do it, I think it's good. Also, Adam, just kind of switching gears a little bit. Robert Mayetta, so good to see you. We miss having you in Charlotte. Hope you're enjoying Florida. But he says, after the culture discussion, can you provide your thoughts on the DOL rule change on contract labor that went into effect on 3/11? Will it be reversed with litigation, or do we need to get in compliance?
That's a good question.
We need Jack.
Yeah, I know. I would suspect that there's going to be litigation around it. So I probably would not worry about it for now, per se, with the limited exception that here. So again, this is the Bozeman theory on independent contractors versus employees. If I'm good with it and Gary's good with it, and by good with it, not, hey, Adam, I want you to be an independent contractor. Oh, Adam, I've never been an independent contractor before. What's that really mean to me? How do I blah, 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 blah. Oh, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. You're going to be able to deduct a bunch of stuff. It's going to be great. Save you a bunch of money on taxes, da, 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 da. Plus, I'm going to be paying you more because you're going to get all of it up front instead of having withholding and blah, blah, blah. Is that good with you? Oh, yeah, that's good with me, boss man. That's not good with it. That's called Gary is entering into something that he doesn't understand. Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like, on the other hand, if you go, we have people all the time that, we talk to, they're like, well, do I have a choice between being an independent contractor and employee? Yeah, I would make a case for either one of them. Yeah, I pay my company then. They're sophisticated people. They know they know what they're doing. I think those are cases where it's like you probably have I would not be too concerned, from the independent contractor versus the employee standpoint, where people have said, hey, I really would love to be an employee, and they're like, no, can do. Not if you're going to work here. That's going to be a little bit more of a problem, because again, where it's going to come and bite you is when somebody files a claim in terms of unemployment or something like that, and they were just unaware. I think probably the other thing that I think is going to be a challenge for some people, one of the 6-factor tests, that I think probably has not received a bunch of weight, but I could see it receiving more weight going forward, is the degree of permanence of the work relationship. Because I mean, a lot of people that we know, it's like, yeah, I've been working with the same independent contractors for 10 years. We're all fine with it. It's like, that could be a problem. But honestly, I would just wait, and kind of see what happens.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions from the gallery? Nice crew today again. Also, be thinking about, what do you guys want us to talk about on our 200th week anniversary? If you don't give us any ideas, we're gonna find our own. Any final thoughts? Sorry that Jack isn't here, but man, I'm hoping he's having fun with his family. I guess
That's
it's
right.
spring break for some people out there. I lose track of that without having kids around or grandkids anymore. So anyway, any last thoughts from your standpoint, Adam? Oh, here we go. Hiring practices. Ooh,
Sure. No, that's great. Yeah, we can hit that up.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Thank you, David. You've been just a plethora of great information today, man. Seems like a tight labor market. What are we seeing? Yes, but I would say that we're not seeing it to be quite as tight as it was a year ago, or a little over. Part of that has been the kind of laser focus that we've put. We've made some amazing hires in the last year. Thank you, Rachel, and our team. And Adam has put a laser focus on trying to help from that recruiting standpoint. But what are you seeing with other types of industries with our client base, Adam, as far as labor market being tight or loosening up?
Um, I think it's still tough. When I say it's tough, it's easier to fill open positions now. However, it seems like there's been about a permanent, probably 25%, wage inflation that's occurred.
Mm,
If I was just think,
yeah.
what am I hearing? That it seems like, and that's permanent. Like, in other words, like it's, hey Gary, I know we faced crazy inflation, the last couple of years, but now that that's stabled off, I'd like to talk to you about taking a pay cut. Yeah, said no one ever. So
Right.
it's why I feel like it's just a permanent factor. So my point in saying that is that it's easier to find people, and at the same time, I think we've got a lot of clients that are like, I have to pay what for what?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good. All right, guys. Anything else before we call it a day? By the way, it will be up on the BGW CPA YouTube channel later on today. And the Shoemaker one, I think, too, because I saw Jack, even though he's on vacation, he reposted this morning our post. So he must have had some time between coffee or something. I don't know. Anyway, hopefully, if you guys are able and in the city, come join us live in 2 weeks for 200th week anniversary at the Hamilton. Ping me if you need to know more specifics about that. So yeah, man, thank you, Jamie. So good to see you, buddy. So good to see you. See your name at least. Thanks for saying great episode.
Appreciate it, Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie
You're
Boyder.
you're you're
Bolt
you're you're getting
rocks.
you're getting indoctrinated into all that documentation that I was talking about.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful day out there.
All right, see you guys.
Enjoy some
Thank you.
sunshine. See
All
y'all.
right,
Bye bye.
bye.